Charlotte Tilbury is one of the most desirable brands in beauty at the moment, climbing from strength to strength on the back of their celebrity, makeup made easy mentality. Actually, if I'm being totally honest, because of this, I had assumed that it wouldn't have been that interesting as a brand to cover in the way that I usually do, but I'm very glad to say that I could not have been more wrong. If I am correct, Charlotte Tilbury has a wholly unknown origin story of perseverance and planning that I'm pretty sure I'm the first person to discuss. This video is sponsored by Coopert. It's a web browser plugin that's custom built to save you money. Firstly, you can use it as a price comparison service, but it's mostly useful as a coupon finder, pulling sources from around the web and auto-applying it to your checkout for websites like Sephora and even eBay, though it is supported by 3 million different retailers. I didn't get a coupon here for Sephora like you can see, so instead of that, I received 6.7% of cash back on my Charlotte Tilbury setting spray, which really adds up, especially in Sephora, where their point system is way less than that. Coopert supports Chrome, Edge, Opera, Firefox, and Safari on desktop, and also Safari on mobile. With over 6 million weekly active users on desktop and 3 million weekly active users on mobile, basically it's a no-brainer way to save you money for free. So to try Coopert for yourself today, click on the link in the description to install it to your browser, and thank you again for Coopert for sponsoring this video. So, the first thing you should know about Charlotte Tilbury Beauty is that it was founded on the 16th of April 2012 and launched on the 2nd of September 2013. At minimum, from what I could find, they launched with, in makeup, mascara, lipstick, lip liner, lip gloss, liquid eyeliner, eye powder pencil, liquid eye pencil, foundation, retoucher, powder, a contour palette, a brow pencil, eyeshadow, an eyeshadow pencil, and blush. In skincare, they had magic cream, makeup remover, cleanser, anti-aging cream, and on top of all of that, they had 2 ancillary products, brushes, and what might be a gift with purchase, but also a makeup bag. All of which launched in a massive week-long event in Selfridges, London, which is a luxury department store in the very heart of London. So this was truly a colossal launch, which they claimed they had hundreds of people queued up around the street for. You may think, this success was based on her celebrity status as a makeup artist, which had been growing in recent years. In fact, just months before this, she had had her own week-long event in Selfridges that was completely star-studded, from names like Nicola Formichetti to Cara Delevingne to Anita Pallenberg. There was a lot going on over the course of a week, but seemingly for no reason. Obviously, in hindsight, it was meant to raise her profile in the run-up to this launch, but at the time, that obviously wasn't known to the customers. And yet, even without that, this launch still is extremely unusual. Comparatively, most cosmetics companies, even celebrity cosmetic lines, start with 1 or 2 products, maybe 3 or 4, and slowly build outwards as their company grows in prominence. It helps to reduce risk, it helps to reduce cost, and it helps the brand to become known for one specific thing on which they can base the rest of their brand. Good examples of this are Kylie Cosmetics, Jeffree Star Cosmetics, Glossier, and the one most similar to Charlotte Tilbury in branding, Max Factor, who also started his line based on his fame with celebrity makeup. So on the surface, this was a very risky launch, even just in product with 20 at-launch products being extremely expensive. And yet, with everything they put together, they really hit the nail on the head. The branding was perfect, mixing in Charlotte Tilbury's personal fame with the celebrity aspects and Hollywood work that she was known for, and also using all of those nude tones which were becoming more of a trend at the time. They also instantly started promoting that the brand was makeup made easy. Literally, she says that phrase on the launch day event, and it gave a hook to the customers with these 10 looks from which a customer could pick their favorite for an easy but perfectly glamorous look. It was also an idea taken into the products. The foundation had 3 different tones, fair, medium, and dark, and then 3 options within that. Fair actually had 4, so there was 10 foundations, but it simplified the foundation picking process. All in all, this was a truly phenomenal launch. Suspiciously big, yes, but clearly extremely well conceived. Price was on the mid to high end, perfect to reflect the celebrity endorsement of Charlotte, who was known for professional makeup. It also well reflected the place of purchase, which was a luxury department store, giving it more prestige to the brand. Promotion 2 was very solid, with celebrities like Kate Moss and Lily Allen wearing the product even before it had launched. Also, the launch event in Selfridges had hundreds of people, which she promoted and then subsequently shared on her social media accounts, which were all well followed at that time already. And then, finally with product, they surmised the ethos of the brand, with purchasable, full looks and a huge range, of which the foundation best fits that slogan, makeup made easy, with the 3 tones, 3 shades idea. And clearly, it worked exceptionally well. The foundation wasn't their hero product as they did expect. It did sell well, we do know that, but actually, the real sales came from the Magic Cream, the Airbrush Flawless Finish Powder, and the Color Chameleon eyeshadow pencils, all quickly becoming favorites with customers, but with one very specific standout, the Pillow Talk shade of their lip liners. And yet, what's incredible about all of that is that it seems to be organic. As opposed to the foundation, which did have promotional efforts, there's actually nothing from the Charlotte Tilbury brand for years that singles out the Pillow Talk shade as to be their next big thing. Instead, it seems to genuinely be success born of word of mouth, from testimonials or blogs. Even Lindsay Lohan singled it out as a product that she loved in a top shelf article from Into the Gloss, which is the blog that started Glossier. It was a cult hit very quickly and is easily the most singled out shade of product in their entire lineup for literally years after launch. However, even with that, something that I think is poignant to point out is that clearly a lot of time, money, and planning went into this extremely cohesive, well thought out launch, which only took them a year from brand foundation. It's suspiciously fast, especially with a 20+ product range and the clearly very expensive launch strategy. This would have cost millions, tens of millions of pounds, far more than either Charlotte Tilbury or her partner Lady Demetra Pinsent would be wise to put in of their personal money, even if they could afford it. Frankly, even for investors, this is a lot. A lot of money, yes, but also a lot of risk to launch with 20 products right off the bat with no evidence that the brand would even work. The brand wasn't exactly fixing a gap in the market here that they knew would be a sure return on investment. It was effectively just a celebrity line with good products. It very easily could have flopped. But it didn't. And even just the following year, they made a very expensive expansion into America in another incredibly huge launch. It began with 2 huge parties, one at the Grove in LA and one at Bergdorf Goodman's in New York. And then they spent all from September 2014 until June 2015 in America with a team promoting the brand across the country with Nordstrom, who didn't even have an exclusivity deal. This was another massive launch in what is historically considered to be a risky country for British brands, something just because branding doesn't always translate. In 2015, they also launched in Canada and Australia, again, both big, splashy, expensive launches. So really, my biggest question was who was funding the company? They did take out a loan from HSBC in 2015, but that was actually after all of this expansion took place. So where did this money come from? The only comparatively large brand launch that I could think off the top of my head was Fenty, who launched with only 5 products themselves, albeit with 40 shades of foundation. But they were backed by LVMH, the owner of Sephora, who had an invested interest in a big launch to match their pre-existing distribution capabilities. LVMH also had Kendo working on it, who was purpose-built to get startups popularized quickly, all of which funded by literally the richest man in the world at that time, Bernard Arnault. So just comparing the Fenty launch with Charlotte Tilbury, they had distribution ready, points of sales ready, endless resources in both product development, packaging, marketing, a celebrity endorsement, and a true product differentiator in their 40 shades of foundation. They had full teams of people in the labs. They had full teams of marketing people completely at their disposal. Charlotte Tilbury had 4 times the product width with less comparative celebrity endorsement, no product differentiator, no distribution, no point of sales predetermined. Why did anybody fund this to this level? Even if it is shareholders, that's a lot of money for no guarantee. Naturally, for answers, I went to their filings, and though they are a private company, so there's not a lot of information, the first thing is first that the company is not lying about being founded in April 2012 and launching just over a year later in September 2013. It's just that the timing is suspicious. Usually, cosmetics brands take 2 years to come up with formulas and branding scheme minimum. Usually brands also launch with 3 or 4 products. In fact, in my Glossier video last month, you may remember me discussing how Emily Weiss, the founder of Glossier, later said launching with 4 products was a mistake and that they should have done 3. And that company was in years of development with $2 million minimum from the first year in capital. More was added later. Even Fenty, with their 4 products, cost about $30 million in cash capital. So comparatively, having 20 products for Charlotte Tilbury would have cost an absolute fortune to develop and certainly would have needed far more than 1 year in development. The earliest I have of any kind of loan figure to kind of explain how much money has gone into it was in 2013, and as we can see, they have $1.4 million owed within the year to creditors. This tells us very little, and honestly, I just think it's production creditors, i.e. somewhere along the supply chain, people have produced products trusting that Charlotte Tilbury will pay it back within the year. This is pretty common in retailing, so nothing too suspicious here. It was actually in the 2015 records that I noticed that they had registered almost £13 million owed under, quote, amounts owed to group undertakings. Now, I was under the impression that Charlotte Tilbury was not under a group in 2015, but I was wrong. Turns out, on the 20th of July 2011, Charlotte Tilbury, Lady Demetra Ponsin, Timothy John Forbes, who I could not find a picture of, and Mark Leslie Vivian Eziri founded a company called Project Ibiza Limited, which later changed its name to Isle Star Limited just before Charlotte Tilbury was launched. But even still, a brand at this size with 20 products at launch and a very splashy marketing budget to go with it would have cost a lot of money. Far more than would have been wise for any of them to have put in personally. Naturally, one thinks of venture capital funding would be the explanation for this, i.e. selling off a part of the company's shares in return for enough money to grow the business, adding value to those shares over time so that they can make out with a nice profit when they sell the company later on or take it to an IPO. However, I actually think the Charlotte Tilbury story is more nuanced or almost more unique than that. While I was researching the founders of Project Ibiza, I was digging into the background of Timothy Forbes and realized that he had started another company in 2006 called Ibiza Cosmetics Limited, which Charlotte Tilbury was also a director of in 2006 all the way through to 2012, which is how long the company lasted. It's interesting that the dates of this match up so well with the launch of Charlotte Tilbury Beauty, and it could explain how they launched with such a wide range of products. But then, why wasn't this company the parent to Charlotte Tilbury? I also think I have an answer to that. I think it's actually because Ibiza Cosmetics Limited was the parent company for a brand called myface.cosmetics, and I think myface.cosmetics was just a test run to see if Charlotte Tilbury would work as its own brand. Really quickly before we go into this next section, I just want to preface this as speculation. I'm about to give you my reasons as to why I think they took the concept from one company and placed it on another, but this rabbit hole was so exceptionally deep. myface.cosmetics was incorporated as Mix Space Brands Limited in 2008. But there was also a Mixed Brands Limited without the space that was founded a year before, but as the name MyFace Limited, a myface.com limited brand that was also launched in 2007, and a Mixed Labs Limited brand, which was definitely in itself a parent company of some kind because it's now rebranded as Federici Brands Limited. So just bear in mind how complicated this got while I explain to you why I think that this brand in particular became Charlotte Tilbury, even if just in concept. Continuing on with the video. You've probably never heard of them unless you are a Charlotte Tilbury fan, and you have been for many, many years, but myface.cosmetics was registered on the 16th of January 2008 by Gail Marie Federici and John Allen Howard Frieda, both of whom are co-founders of John Frieda Professional Hair Care. The face of this brand, however, was of course Charlotte Tilbury. Here she is introducing the brand months before the launch at Fashion Week. But that really downplays her role, because her name was far and away the most discussed thing about this brand. Almost every single article in promotion of myface.cosmetics talks about how Charlotte Tilbury developed the products and or her promoting the products themselves. Even in comparison to the products themselves, Charlotte Tilbury is significantly more discussed. Federici and Frieda both wanted to be silent investors. They have explicitly said that. And effectively, this brand was Charlotte Tilbury wrapped up and sold. In fact, in this video where she is previewing it at Julia McDonald's Spring Summer 2010 show, you can see the foundation, which here is a sample, is very similar to the packages that would be used by Charlotte Tilbury Skincare and also Charlotte Tilbury the foundation packaging as well. Plus, you can also see from this video, which is on the myface.cosmetics YouTube channel, you can also see the development of a lot of suspiciously similar products. myface.cosmetics had foundation, eyeshadow, concealer, face powder, blush, brushes, bronzer, either lip gloss or liquid lipstick, maybe both, and lip balm. There are 10 products. I'm not sure how many products that makes. I don't think it's 10 if I'm wrong about the lipstick lip gloss combo. It's also worth saying it took 2 years to get it into stores. There was 2 years from the time it was founded to when it launched, which I mentioned earlier is the standard, even if their product width is double the standard at 10. Now, there's extremely little information about MyFace to know if the range was expanded on from this over the interim between their 2009 launch and Charlotte Tilbury being founded in 2012, so I can't say if it ended up matching the 20 products made for Charlotte Tilbury, but certainly the fact that 9 of these products match is quite sizable. You're also probably very well aware, if you're watching this video, that brands cannot use the same formulas between companies unless the formula itself is purchased. However, much like Charlotte Tilbury, the foundation is also divided into fair, medium, and dark with 3 shades for each. I am pretty sure this is the same product. I could be wrong. It's suspiciously close. Other similarities, aside from the product range and the very, very heavy emphasis on the fact that Charlotte Tilbury is both involved and formulated the product, are the fact that it used a lot of her celebrity connections, in fact a lot of the exact same celebrities, promoting it as a favourite of Kate Moss, Lily Allen, Naomi Campbell and Cate Blanchett. There's also the fact that they met through an Ibiza connection, which connects the brand because the code name for Charlotte Tilbury before it launched was Project Ibiza. It changed its name legally from Isle Star Manufacturing Limited to Charlotte Tilbury Beauty, literally only a few months before launch, in fact. myface.cosmetics also launched with nail polishes when they had their global expansion into America, specifically into LA in Fred Segal 2012, which I think is interesting because it starts to give them more of a luxury trajectory for the positioning of the myface.cosmetics brand, which initially launched in Boots in the UK, which is our equivalent of maybe like a CVS. So Fred Segal would be slightly higher in that luxury trajectory. And the kicker of it all? The last piece of media that I could find any evidence of myface.cosmetics putting something out into the world was on the 9th of August 2012 when they posted this YouTube video. This was 5 months after Charlotte Tilbury began her own personal blog, in which she refers to Team Tilbury, 4 months after Charlotte Tilbury was founded as Isle Star Manufacturing Limited, and 2 months before they began on their YouTube campaign to promote Charlotte Tilbury as a person in the run-up to the launch, which would explain why they had that Selfridges event as self-promotion a few months before the brand officially launched. It was equally as big as the official launch, but it just sold other brands like Mac and Tom Ford. In fact, because of all of this, I have a sneaking suspicion that this was the original launch date and it had to be pushed back to accommodate extra time for development or, I don't know, something similar. But I have no evidence for that at all. That last bit is just my suspicion. Also, it's well worth pointing out the differences in marketing, going from myface.cosmetics being its own entity, almost Y2K in its aesthetic delivery. It's a vibe, actually, I really like it. Realizing how much of the promotion around the brand revolved around Tilbury, and then coming out with a brand that revolves around her like a celebrity brand for makeup artists. It would have made sense for them to realize the true value of MyFace was Charlotte Tilbury, come back, refocus her to be a founder, link her closer to the brand, and then relaunch it as her brand, complete with backstory and how she liked makeup since she was 12 or 13, then adding her direct Hollywood connections and celebrity affiliations, which were never directly to MyFace, but through Charlotte Tilbury, and something that she has always been connected with in her personal career. But now, with Charlotte Tilbury Beauty, could monetize. In fact, Charlotte Tilbury uses this idea of celebrity and Hollywood so much in her general everyday speech that Kelly Gooch's video, which is more of an overview of her as a person than this video is, she dedicates a whole section of the video to just how much she says the word celebrity and how the brand uses celebrity names in their products. Ergo, it makes sense to find the value in their initial MyFace brand and reformulate that to capitalize on the thing that made the brand special. However, there is an admittedly huge thorn in the side of this theory. Neither of the Friedas have any mention in either the at-launch Charlotte Tilbury parent company, Isle Star, nor are they mentioned in the 2006-2012 company Ibiza Cosmetics Limited, which I think may have been the parent company of MyFace. Obviously, it doesn't mean the company wasn't owned by Ibiza Cosmetics just because they're not in the parent company as well, especially given the timing, but I would find it very strange that Charlotte Tilbury was actively the face of another company while having her own company during the exact same years. But all of this is to say that it is so close that it makes me think that this was all a tester before launching the actual Charlotte Tilbury brand. Frankly, it could have been MyFace that gave the investors confidence to really heavily invest so much in the Charlotte Tilbury brand in the first place. So, given the similarities, the fact that they couldn't have used the same formulas without being sued, and the fact that Friedas explicitly wanted to be silent partners, it would explain where the almost £13 million under amounts owed to group undertakings came from one Charlotte Tilbury company to another. Group undertakings. Either that or Tilbury herself saw the value that she created and went off on her own, and the amounts owed to group undertakings refers to something completely different that I just haven't thought of. I just doubt it because of all of the many reasons that I've just given you. It is also worth pointing out that because myface.cosmetics did wind down around this time, they ended up not closing the company but filing as a micro business before eventually dissolving the company on the 11th of January 2022. myface.cosmetics in August 2022 then acquired PierreMichelBeauty.com, but then in February 2023, Pierre Michel Beauty, the company, acquired myface.cosmetics. I have no idea what hocus pocus is going on there, but suffice to say it's not totally dead as a brand. It's now owned by Pierre Michel Beauty, but the company itself is dissolved. So back to Charlotte Tilbury Cosmetics. In the timeline, they are now very well established with 20 plus products. They've expanded into America, Canada, and Australia, all with great success, thanks in part to their growing social media platform and their frankly excellent planning around points of sale, including the launch of their very first brick-and-mortar store in London's Covent Garden in November 2015. By 2016, they made their first million in profit, which, bearing in mind they had almost 15 million in loans to pay off within that year, is quite a feat because they didn't just make 1 million in profit, but they almost made 2. They had inarguably proved by this point that their plan would work. All those tweaks to the initial company that came from transferring myface to Charlotte Tilbury, if I am correct about it, worked. Charlotte Tilbury was a solid bet to base the brand around. However, in 2017, the brand would even surpass her own personal fame just a touch with the launch of the infamous Pillow Talk lipstick, based off of the cult popularity of the lip liner, obviously. This would become a hero product so successful that it arguably outgrew the fame of Charlotte Tilbury as a person, with them very quickly being able to boast that a Pillow Talk lipstick sold once every 2 minutes. And yet that wasn't the biggest launch of the year. Instead, that goes to a contract signed with MH Al Shaya Co. to franchise Charlotte Tilbury across basically the whole of the Middle East and Africa, with their first store and second brick-and-mortar store in the whole world being opened in the Avenues Mall in Kuwait in September 2017. Again, the party was a colossal affair, though this one is much more likely paid by the franchisee. They had a huge launch, complete with mocktails and celebrity appearances. Immediately, they started working on their celebrity ambassadorship in the region, and Charlotte Tilbury herself was there to open the 2,600 square foot space split across 2 floors. It was the largest Charlotte Tilbury store in the world. This was quickly followed by a store in Doha Festival City in Qatar in October, and then one in the Dubai Mall in January 2018. Another very quick expansion for the company with an exceptional business partner, which, in case you don't know, Al Shaya is one of the biggest and oldest franchises in the entire region. They franchise everything from H&M to Starbucks, Topshop, Pinkberry, Pottery Barn, American Eagle. Really, the list goes on. They're a massive, massive company. So to have their expertise as part of the deal basically almost guaranteed success in the region, almost guaranteed money coming in from the region, and guaranteed another major expansion in the Charlotte Tilbury portfolio. Expansion then continued into Hong Kong in January 2018. 2019 saw a Sephora contract across Asia, bringing them into Singapore, and by 2020 they had a contract to come into India through Nykaa. More big, splashy, expensive expansions. But why? Obviously, this was for a sale. Clearly, all of this effort was done either to take the company into an IPO, which means it lists on the stock market, or it was going to sell to a massive conglomerate and make back all of that initial investment. And prospective parent companies do just love big, splashy expansion and easily boasted profits, which for context, in 2018, they had 100 million in turnover and 3.5 million in profit, even with all of this ridiculously large expansion. Which all led to June 2020, when it was confirmed that Charlotte Tilbury had been sold to Puig for £1 billion, or around 1.3 billion US dollars, just 7 years after launch. Their huge, risky expansion had all been worth it. Tilbury would remain as the head of the company and was reported as owning between 50 and 75% of the company. Of course, they had shareholders and investors, even if a huge portion of the money came from amounts owed to group undertakings. This to me is the biggest clue that the original brand had come from myface, because clearly they'd seen the value that was Charlotte Tilbury and knew they could turn that into a startup which would be perfect for a sale down the line. And clearly, it really genuinely worked. They made all their money back and some. For the company from here, little changed. They had a formula that was working exceptionally well, very popular products, and good branding. They continued their expansion, coming through with the Nike deal for expansion into India in 2020. They then came into Korea in 2021, into airports through a contract with Air Rianta International, beginning with Dublin in 2022. Their first store in Saudi Arabia, 2023. 2024 had more airport shops, with one opening in Cyprus, and then launching fragrances in 2024 as well. Basically, they wanted to expand on the pre-existing customer and reach new markets. It wasn't a broken formula, so they didn't need to fix it. Really, the only major change to customers in this time was Charlotte Tilbury's social media, which has now gone viral multiple times for how affected she is in her videos. But she was kind of always like this, even well before myface launched. It's just over time, she's grown into more of a caricature of herself online, and clearly it works. That's what we, the people, want to see. I think I say darlings and far too many times in a day, and not in a good impression either. To be honest, if we don't see someone choose Charlotte Tilbury on RuPaul's Drag Race soon, I'll be very shocked, because she's so easily imitatable, just apparently not by me. But really, this isn't a business move we can analyze too much. She's just good in front of the camera, it's good to link it back to the founder's story, and she's generally very captivating, which helps their brand awareness. It's hard to dig too deep into it. I'm pretty sure you can all tell why this is a good idea. Really, the only thing I will say is, because of how well branded and solid the actual branding of the company is, I do think it would easily continue if she was to step away. I'm not going to go into a full SWOT analysis here because it's coming to the end of the video, but I do think building something greater than the founder is probably the next step in their evolution if they want to turn it into a legacy brand, especially considering their biggest risk that I foresee is overexposure. They really are a very big and splashy brand, and Charlotte Tilbury as the spokesperson is so exaggerated. So they take up space, they take up air in both retail and online. It's very hard to miss them. So basically, I fear that people will tire of that and become sick of her, maybe even call her try hard given the way her personal demeanor comes across, and they'll just find a way to twist that into a downfall. I also do think the tide is almost on the verge of turning now, to be honest, with the recent 2024 scandal-ish of when Bella Hadid stopped being the face of Charlotte Tilbury, which she had only just begun the year previous. It made people a little skeptical that she was fired over pro-Palestine tweets, but they both do deny this, insisting that it was due to Bella launching her own beauty brand, Bella, not her personal stance, and that they still remain close friends. We still don't know if this is true, really. I suppose we never will do, but it definitely affected the personal perception of Charlotte Tilbury and, by proxy, the Charlotte Tilbury brand. But at the very least, from an analysis point of view, it does show a public willingness for the brand to fall sometime in the near future. I obviously hope that doesn't happen, but we as people are very fickle, and for some reason we do enjoy seeing the collapse of giants regardless of whether it's deserved or not. It's why the news focuses so largely on negative things. It's why my videos get double the views if I put the word fall in the title. It's human nature and it's inevitable. But for that exact reason, they can be smart about it, and they can begin a plan to circumvent that seemingly impending downfall instead of having to do damage control after it happens, which would not guarantee that they survive. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please do like and subscribe. I'll leave my Bella video here in case you're interested in that launch. If you like fashion and you'd like to see videos about that, my fashion channel is linked here as well, and a special thank you goes out to my patrons over on Patreon for their ongoing support. All content used in this video is done so in accordance with the principles of fair use. However, if you have any concerns, please contact me directly at contact@understitch.co.uk.